Okay, so I decided to do a video today about deck permits and how they work. Just kind of an introduction about how they work and exactly who needs one. I'll be doing some more follow-up videos with more permit information coming soon, but for now I'm going to just focus on the primary reasons of why you're going to need a permit and who needs a permit, and then just some requirements that will just be some basic instructions so you don't have to be digging through searching for permit information. But anyway, so we'll get started. So what I'm going to do is just quickly share my screen here. And as you can see, I have actually like a mock house ready to go. So this is our going to be our model for today. But I actually have something to show everyone before we kind of get started here. So this right here is the Wood Decks Handbook. So you can download this at the City of Winnipeg website. So I'll show you how to get to it at the end of the video. But anyway, so this is basically what you need to download before you start any project. You can also go to our website, and on our website there is a tab under deck tips that is how to do a deck permit. So there's a really good guide there. But the best place to start is to follow this guide. This is a lot of in-depth information on exactly what you need to do to build a deck and some building practices, and also what kind of deck you can build and what kind of zoning requirements you have to abide by to build a deck. So just to get started, the first rule that comes up when I scroll down, so it's obviously got the table of contents. So right here, the first thing in general information, it says here, do I require a permit to build a deck? And it says yes. A building permit is required for any deck which is higher than 600 millimeters, 24 inches above ground level, or any deck that's going to eventually support an enclosed structure. So what that means pretty much is in Winnipeg, in the City of Winnipeg, and it does differ depending on which area you are in Manitoba. So some municipalities are different, although most of them follow this guide to some extent. So a lot of municipalities will actually have reused the deck handbook for their own guide, but just don't assume that this is your rules. So this only applies to the City of Winnipeg, not to municipalities around Winnipeg or even right outside the perimeter. So always make sure to check your municipality. So anyways, it says here that any deck over 24 inches requires a permit. So, and also even decks that are going to support an enclosed structure in the future. So if I go to my model here, so what that means is actually I already have my door height set to the proper height here. So here we're at 3 feet. So say for example we have a door that's 3 feet high. So what's going to end up happening is if you want to have let's say a landing or just a kind of a small, let's say a 12 by 12 walkout deck here, like so. I'm going to just quickly switch these colors up. Bear with me. There we go. So if you're going to want a deck such as this, now this deck will require a permit, okay? Now there's one exception to the rule of the 24-inch rule. So this deck is, let's see, what is it? We're looking at 144 square feet, it's 12 by 12, and it is 3 feet high. So a deck like this will require a permit. Now the only kind of caveat to that rule is you are allowed a landing outside of your door that is under 36 square feet. So let's say, for example, you did not want to get a permit for personal reasons or just because maybe your setback. I'll get to setback soon about requirements for your zoning, so that'll come in a minute. But pretty much your zoning, the only kind of way you can kind of get around this rule is if you build a kind of a small landing, and this is going to be an ugly landing. This is just for this demonstration purposes only. So here we go. Say you wanted to build a small landing like this. And I would make this nicer in real life, of course, but right now, this is what you guys get, because I don't want to drag out this video. But anyway, so so a landing like this, under 36 square feet, 13.3 square feet, something like this does not require a permit. So you are allowed a landing, so that's the only kind of exception to the rule. And then this deck, now that we've brought it under 2 feet, does not require a permit. And so what that means, when you don't need a permit, it means you can build it slightly differently. I still recommend to always abide by National Building Code, but you can, you're not going to need an inspection. You're not going to have to follow zoning guidelines. So we're going to get on that next. And pretty much you can build it however you want, and you don't need to apply for the permit. So the permit usually costs about $170, I think, right now, and with the city. And you obviously won't need to go. I mean, the $170 is pretty much, I mean, it's an expense, but the application is the far more difficult portion of it. Applying for it, getting it approved. A lot of people have a lot of headaches getting their information approved. I'm going to show you a mock template of a permit that's been kind of somewhat completed coming up, but in another video. But for now, we're going to just focus on kind of the zoning requirements. So anyway, so something like this would not need a permit. Now, for example, I'm going to just switch this up a bit now. We're going to get out of here and go back to our original deck. So that is how that works. Now we're going to look at the zoning. And so zoning, there are a lot of exceptions to the rule, even in the City of Winnipeg, but as a standard, which you can use as a standard for now, and don't hold me to this, because you have to check your own your property plot lines with the city or either with the survey, but the rule of thumb is generally this. So what the city wants to see in terms of zoning, and zoning is pretty much the distances you are allowed to build to on your property. Okay, so a deck over 2 feet has to abide by certain rules. Okay, and so what the city wants is they want a deck over 2 feet to be 25 feet from the back property line. So this deck would be infringing. So from the back property line, this is the fence. I have a little kind of a fence in here. And they want generally, and this, there are exceptions to this, 4 feet on each side of the house. So if you have a deck that's over 2 feet in height, and you need to if you're planning a deck that's over 2 feet in height, you have to abide by these rules. Okay, there are ways to get around them. So you can apply for a zoning variance, which is a bit of a, I'm going to do another video on that as well, but a zoning variance is basically an application to request amendments to the bylaws from the city, and it's a pretty long process, about 6 to 8 weeks of processing time, and you have to get some approval by your neighbors. But if you need to obviously bend these rules a little bit, that's one way to do it. So yeah, but for right now, if we were, let's say just for an example, we're going to try and comply with this, with these set of rules, because say we want to build a deck, or let's say we want to build a 2-tier deck. If I was doing this design, what I would do is I would suggest to the clients, let's see, we're going to move this back, to do kind of right around 10 feet. Now we're going a little crazy here. Why are we doing that? Okay, good. Right around 10 feet here. And we'll do a second level. Let's say they were doing a 2-tier. I mean, whatever. And let's see, 16 foot. This is a little big. Move that in. Pull this like this. No, we're going to go back. This is a little too far out. There we go. Make it look nice. Just switch some stuff up here. There we go. So why I'm doing this is to kind of explain to you kind of exactly what would happen here. So in this case, if I was doing it, this upper level would actually be, since it's the only level over 2 feet, it would be the only level you'd have to apply for a permit with. So this lower level doesn't count as a permittable deck platform. So that's something to consider, and always make sure that you understand what you're doing there, because you may not know this, but when you do apply for a permit and it's approved, the city actually recognizes this deck surface as part of your home. So actually I believe it's your property taxes will go up because the square footage of your residence has gone up. And if you submitted, let's say you submitted this deck as well, and this deck is actually 1'3", but just say you did and it just slipped through the cracks, you'd actually be paying property taxes on, let's see here, another 216 square feet that you shouldn't have paid on. So make sure to always understand that it's only as of today, so 2021, we're looking at, I guess we're June tomorrow, only doing the level that's over 2 feet. Now, if the whole thing was over 2 feet, obviously that'd be a totally different story. But right now, I'm just doing this for example purposes, and only this level is over 2 feet. So that's pretty much the rule of thumb here. So we're going to start with that in this video, just to keep nice and short. Now, there is a rumor circulating around that I hear all the time: if you don't attach to the house, there is no need to get a permit. So that is not true. Okay, so actually, if you go back to the deck handbook, it says right here on the second line item, what if I don't attach to my house? Do I still need a building permit? And it says regardless of whether or not you need a building permit. So that'll be debunked really quickly. I'm going to go into quickly right now, like what's the what can happen if you don't get the permit. So there are a few things, and it depends on what you're infringing on. That's really the thing you have to consider, mostly. So if you don't get a permit and you're in compliance with all of the zoning bylaws, so say you're 4 feet away from the side yards and you're 25 feet away from the backyard, like here. So if you're something like that, you don't get your permit and you do get busted. So what will happen generally is you're going to pay a fine, which will be probably around $200 to $300. And then they'll just make you get the permit. So the only thing that would suck about that is if you built it improperly and then they made you bring it up to code, because when you do the permit process, they inspect the way you're building it. You submit forms on how you're going to build the deck, and they approve that to make sure you're doing it correctly. So if you didn't do it correctly the way they want it, then you could get burned a little bit in that way. So something to consider there. So that's why I always say to people, and that's why we always insist on doing the permits. It's just much easier. I mean, it's a headache. To be totally honest, it's a massive headache. It's just the way it is, though. It's much better if you just do it, because there's nothing worse than having the city or a municipality on your back and bugging you about bringing something up to code, because it's way harder after the fact. So just get the permit and bite the bullet. I'm telling you, it's way better to just do it right the first time and just take the time and do it. So there's that. Now, let's say, for example, you built it improperly, and I get so many calls on this every single year. It is outrageous about people who had a contractor who built their deck, let's say, in violation of this 25-foot rule, and now the deck is built. They didn't get a permit. Maybe they lied or they just didn't know, and now they have this deck infringing. So the only way they can kind of fix this is if the city catches you, and in new developments especially, the city does check and they do come around. So if you're in a new development specifically, like in a suburb in Winnipeg, bear in mind the city inspectors do come around and they will check your backyard. So don't think it's like, you can get away with it. There's a good chance you won't. So this deck, what they'd make you do is either, depending on how deep it is in the yard, they're going to make you get a zoning variance and then make you bring it up to code and then take out the permit. Or they could actually just make you take it down. It would be an epic disaster, and then, that'll just be a huge, massive headache. So it's always good to go through the proper zoning and permitting processes to get this all figured out beforehand, because in construction, taking this all apart, I'm going to tell you right now, taking this stuff all apart, especially wood decks, even maintenance-free decks, it's a massive headache. Decks do not come apart well, and when people ask me to come and repair decks, it's a nightmare, and you just can't do it, because when you pull stuff apart, it gets broken, it's all warped together, and it's just no longer what it was when it was brand new. The boards aren't straight as they used to be, and so we just don't like doing it. So it's always best in construction to do it right the first time. I cannot stress that enough. I'm going to conclude this video just with a few resources, and then I'm going to go into depth in a few more videos about more practices that could help people applying for their permits. We do apply for all the permits for all of our projects. I'm just doing this video for people who are kind of in the exploration phase of like kind of buying a deck. So it'll just help them kind of make a better informed decision. So we're going to just go to some websites here. So we're going to just go to our website. All right, so this is us. So just the first thing to consider is right here under deck tips. This is obviously the desktop version, so there's going to be a little kind of like three-lined bar in the mobile version. You just click on that and then just go to deck tips again. And so we're going to hit deck permit. Okay, so I wrote this guide I think about 4 years ago. Now this is a pretty in-depth guide of exactly what you can expect for every single portion of applying for a permit. I'd even go into kind of exactly where you can drop it off. I'm going to do another, like I said, a more in-depth video of this, but for now, this is a really good resource if you're just doing it yourself, and you can kind of get kind of like the quick and easy way of figuring this out. For the deck handbook, to access that, you can actually access it through our website. So just at the bottom here, the resources page, you just go to the Wood Deck Handbook PDF and just click on the link, and it'll bring you right here. It has everything in this thing. It's actually it's a little confusing, but it's a really well written guide, and it really explains what you can and cannot do very clearly. So make sure to take a look at it. A lot of people who don't know construction stuff, I understand they might have trouble with it, but that's why we're here, so we can kind of help you. We basically take care of all this for you anyway. But if you're construction savvy, or you're looking to build your own deck, this might be something to study up on. Really studying it will help you understand how to do everything. So that takes care of zoning. And what I'll do is I'm going to be making a few more of these, and we will, I think for the next video we're going to work on not just the zoning, but we'll go down here to the paperwork aspect of what you need and where you need to go to apply. So here's some of the paperwork, and we'll be doing that on the next video. Anyway, have a nice night, and talk to you soon. Bye.